The Beyond the Fame podcast is fed by Lido Pizza. Lido Pizza never cuts corners. For menu and locations, visit LidoPizza.com. And of course, this podcast would not be possible without our longtime title sponsor, the Hollywood Casino at Charlestown Races in West Virginia. Upcoming featured entertainment includes Kevin James adding a second show June 7th and Band of Horses June 14th. Details and tickets at HollywoodCasinoCharlestown.com. Must be 21 to enter the casino floor and attend a show. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Welcome to the newest episode of Beyond the Fame with Jason Fraley. I'm your host, Jason Fraley, picking the brains of the top filmmakers, musicians, and artists of our time. Gary Puckett and the Union Gap joins the Happy Together tour at the Birchmere in Alexandria, Virginia on June 8th and June 10th. He joined me to preview the show and share memories of recording hits like Woman, Woman, Young Girl, and Lady Willpower. Hey, Gary Puckett. Hey, thank you so much for joining the show today.
Hey, you're welcome, Jason. It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
We are talking to, of course, Gary Puckett of Gary Puckett and the Union Gap, because you'll be part of the Happy Together tour at the Birchmere in Alexandria, Virginia on June 8th and June 10th. I want to get into the, who else is touring with you in a second. I'll list them in a second, folks. But first, start with the venue. Have you done the Birchmere before? I mean, it's this great historic spot there in Alexandria.
Yes, I have quite a few times. As a matter of fact, it's actually one of our favorite places to work. It's very well, it's intimate, and they've got a great crew, great sound system, and it's just everything that artists like me like when you're performing for your fans and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, we love the Birchmere.
Yeah, I always love, the hallways and lobby when on your way in, they have all the album covers of all the people that have played there and, signed photos and stuff. So I'm sure you probably have an album cover or two on the wall there somewhere.
Somewhere, yes.
Awesome. All right. Well, without further ado, of course, it's called the Happy Together Tour because you're touring with the Turtles. That was their big hit song. And also Little Anthony. I just interviewed him the other day. And Jay and the Americans, the Vogues, and the Cowsills. I'm sure you go way back with a lot of those folks. But so how long have you been doing this Happy Together Tour with the Turtles? It's been since like 84, I believe.
1984 was the very first Happy Together tour. It was put on by some promoters from New York City, and one of the guys from this guy's office came to see me and said, "My boss wants to talk to you." I said, "Okay." So I went into the city and we spoke, and they said, "We're working with the Turtles and the association. We'd like to work with you." And so we started working together. And from that, I kind of suggested to them that they should put all three of us out on tour together, and they said, "We kind of been thinking about that." So they did, and they added Spanky from Spanky and Our Gang. So it was Spanky and Our Gang, Gary Puckett, the Union Gap, the association, and the Turtles was the very first Happy Together tour in 1984, and I think we worked about 8 months of that year, and it was truly successful. So they put another one out in 85. I forget the exact lineup, but of course it was the Turtles. I think Gary Lewis, maybe Mark Lindsay, and who else? I don't know. It's slipping my mind, but it was successful. And from that, they put out the Monkees 20-year reunion tour in 1986. So by then, the Monkees were big stars already for 20 years. So I happened to be on that tour as well with Herman's Hermits and Rob Grill from the Grassroots. So it was very successful. In fact, that was the biggest tour of that year. They set records for attendance as well as merchandise, and so it was fantastic because all those mothers were 15 years old when the Monkees became popular, and then years later they brought all their daughters, so it was a big deal. But yeah, Happy Together is happening. It's been going on since I think I did the first one lately in 2012. And I've been on it this might be my 8th time.
Wow. So 2012 was the most recent time before this that you did it, but you started it all the way back in 84. Wow. That's awesome. That it's still been going. And by the way,
Right.
I was, this is going to blow your mind, but I was born in 84. You've been, but I am a 40-year-old man now, so time is crazy that way. But yeah, so yeah, so I can officially say you've been doing this tour since I've been alive. That's great. But let's go into when you were born in Minnesota in 1942. Oh wow, October 17th. I'm the 16th. So there you go. Some kismet there.
Oh, no
Um
kidding. Wow.
okay, so 42 October. You were born, I'm a big movie history guy. That means you were born a month before Casablanca premiered in November. So you predate Casablanca, my friend.
Wow, isn't that something?
We'll
No,
always
pretty
we'll
well you
always
are.
have birthdays. Well, so all right, so in all seriousness, paint a picture of your early childhood. What did your parents do for a living? I know you moved to Washington State at 6, but do you even remember the Minnesota days?
I remember them from going back and seeing my grandparents because they lived in a little town called Pelican Rapids for most of their lives, if not all of their lives. And let's see, let me get my thoughts together here. So
Yeah.
I was born in Hibbing, Minnesota, and my dad went off to fight in World War II. And so my grandfather drove to Hibbing, picked up my mom and me, and took us back to Pelican Rapids. And that's where we stayed for the 2.5 years that my dad was in the service. He actually was captured by the Germans and spent nearly 6 months in German prison camps. Fortunately, they were not the death camps, and he eventually, though they thought he had died in one of those camps, he got out when the Russians came, I guess, and so he got back to friendly lines and came back home, and so I don't really remember any of that, to be honest with you. We moved to a little place called where was it, Watertown, South Dakota, and that's kind of where my memories sort of started. But by the time we got to Yakima Valley in Washington State, that's when I start to remember things because I was 5.5 years old. And I was going to start school, and so yeah, that's when it all started happening for me. Yakima was a great place to grow up for a boy. High desert, lakes, streams, hunting, fishing, the four seasons. So summertime we had swimming and the like, and the lakes and all that. And wintertime we had skiing, and so it was a great place to grow up,
Yeah.
away from the huge city environment. I think that town has grown exponentially since then. But Yakima Valley is my earlier memories. My mom and dad were both musicians. She was a pianist, a very accomplished one, by the way. He was a sax player. That's how they met, being musicians in a big band in the early 40s. And
Right.
they decided that they wanted to have a more traditional way of life. Plus, being a musician in those days was not real easy. Well, it's never easy, but it was a lot less easy in those days because tour buses were drafty and cold, and they didn't have all the amenities of tour buses today. So my dad went into merchandising, and my mom was just really kind of a housewife and did those odd jobs, that department stores would have you do.
Yeah.
If you've ever gone to Costco and you're shopping and you see that person standing there giving out samples and stuff, that's the sort of thing that my mom did. But I had two brothers, two sisters, so it was a big family, and she was tasked with watching over all of us. And of course, my dad went out and found money. He worked. And that's what I always say about my wife and I. She handles everything except finding the money. I go get the money, I bring it home, I give it to
Yeah.
her, and she makes us
Yeah.
wealthy and wise. You know what I mean? So, I mean, when I was 15, I hitchhiked to Union Gap to do my Saturday job. And that, of course, is where I took the name for the band when
Hmm.
eventually I found myself thinking, how do I get out of these nightclubs? I don't want to be doing this forever, the smoke and alcohol environment. And, I thought and thought and thought. And there was a point where I said, okay, here's what we're going to do, guys. We're going to wear Union soldier outfits because I always liked that history for the U.S.
course.
and we're going to wear Union soldier outfits, and we're going to call it the Union Gap because of the word Union.
Ah, I
Union
like
soldier,
it.
Union.
Hey,
I went,
you're talking right. We're right here, not far from Gettysburg. We're right near the Mason-Dixon line. So I'm loving this Union, the tie-in. Not to mention Union Gap, Washington. It's multiple meanings. I love it.
yeah, it's great. It worked out, in the long run. In fact, in the short run, even because the band thought it was a pretty dumb idea, but they kind of fell into it as they found that the fans. This is before we had any success, of course, and we were still working in nightclubs. But when we showed up in the nightclubs, people liked that idea. At first they kind of went, "Well, here comes Paul Revere and the Raiders again," but
Uh,
then they realized that it sort of created this atmosphere, sort of a costume thing, and everybody got into it. And we were working the dance clubs, so we were playing R&B and Beatles and Stones and
yeah.
all the music of the day. And eventually took it all on the road, which I found out was really hard to do when you don't have hit records. But that's where we put it all together and found a place in Los Angeles called Western Costume. Rented an outfit and took it to a tailor in Tijuana, Mexico, and he made our first outfits. And from there, I made a portfolio, took it around to all the record companies, and eventually found a guy at Columbia Records who
Nice.
loved the outfits, loved my voice, had a song in his hand called "Woman, Woman, Have You
Yeah.
Got Cheating on Your Mind?" And he said, "Let's go make a record." So
The rest
we
is
did,
history.
and the rest is history.
Well, I definitely want to get more into, signing and with Columbia and Woman and all that stuff. But real quick, what I want to fill in the gap, pun not intended. What brought you down to San Diego from Washington State to meet because you formed the band in San Diego in '67. So what brought you down?
Actually, it was my dad who, like I say, had been in the merchandising business all of his life, and he worked his way up from window dresser to management. And so he got an offer from an independent department store in Pacific Beach, which is San Diego area.
Mm,
And so he took the job, and I just happened that I was graduating from high school that year in 1960. And so he moved the entire family down to San Diego, and I went to 2 years of city college because my parents wanted me to go into higher education, and of course, music was on my mind, but still, it was kind of a tough road in that sense. I went to school for 2 years, finally tossed my books off the bridge one day and just said, suicide for the books. I don't want to go to college anymore. I want to chase the music scene. And at which case, I went to work in a little place called Foreign Auto Supply, which was basic engine parts for foreign cars. And we didn't have that many foreign cars in the US at that time. And, Triumph, British Auto Parts was here. Volkswagen was here, but it was kind of a training ground for me. I worked in the auto parts store during the day, and at night worked in the nightclubs and chased the music things. So
thank you. Thanks for filling in that backstory. Yeah, all right. All right, awesome. All right. Well, I was just curious how you ended up down that way because that's where the band is known for forming. All right, cool.
right,
Well, and then as you mentioned, you signed with Columbia Records with it was Jerry Fuller, right? He saw you at a bar, or was it a bowling alley, or what was it, a dive bar or something?
yeah, no, it was a nightclub called the Quad Room, and the Quad Room was actually in the bowling alley. So in order to get into the club, you had to walk in the door of the bowling alley and down to the center where
But
the
you didn't need to wear
entrance
bowling
was.
shoes to dance at the bar. You didn't need to do that.
No, we got a lot of odd reaction to our outfits in the beginning, but then people caught on to it and loved it all. So it was a lot of fun, created a sort of party atmosphere, But that was it. Yep, the quad room. That's where Jerry saw us after he had seen my portfolio. Kind of a fun story. I was taking the portfolio around all the record companies in Los Angeles, and everybody was turning us down because they were open arms to begin with, and then they'd look at it and they'd go, "Wow, that's really great, but you know what? That's not my bailiwick, so to speak. So you'll have to go see so and so." And everybody was always sidestepping. They never wanted to take responsibility. So I was always turned down somehow, except for Coal Gems Records, who had interest, and Columbia Records. And I'm glad that I chose Columbia because Coal Gems had a little group called the Monkees, and they decided that when they got into the lawsuits that the Monkees were bringing them, they decided to close their doors and declare bankruptcy, which was totally unfair to the Monkees, of course. But you know, they had hired the Monkees as, what do you call it, work for hire kind of thing, you know. So they were giving them a paycheck, but it certainly wasn't worth what they were making for the record company because of their television show and all that kind of stuff. And
Right, right.
so anyway, you know, it was it lost track of what I was saying there exactly, but
Jerry Fuller discovering you and signing with Columbia and all that. So yeah, as you mentioned, you had the breakthrough first album, Woman Woman, in '68. Obviously the hit title song. I think it reached number 4 on the Billboard Hot 100, something like that. It was a massive hit. Everyone knew it. People still know it. Is it true it was inspired by Ruby Don't Take Your Love to Town? Mel Tillis wrote it for Waylon Jennings, but it was a conversation about that. Is how that song came about for you guys, or is there anything to that?
uh, I honestly can't tell you the truth of it or not.
Yeah.
I was aware of those guys, Waylon, of course. I didn't know the writers of Woman Woman at the time. And there may have been something to that story, but I'm not really sure. Personally, if I were thinking about it, I would say no. But that is not gospel. I do know that it was a great song, that Jerry Fuller thought it was going to be a hit. And he was right, but he was also a talented producer and knew how to make a great record. So fortunately for me and Columbia Records, you know, we made a great record out of it, and it still stands up to this day. So I'm very happy and proud of that song and that record.
Oh, absolutely. And memories of being in the studio recording it. I mean, I asked you about, the inspiration behind the writers, and you can neither confirm nor deny those stories, whether that's apocryphal or not. But how about you when you're involved in it, recording in the studio? Was it a hard one? Did it take a lot of takes, or did it come pretty easily?
Well, you know, in those days, particularly when it was done with orchestras, which it was, we had a 30-piece orchestra, approximately. I can't recall the exact number, but we had a string section, of course, horn section. We had the rhythm section and all the percussion and all that kind of stuff. And it was an exciting day because a lot of the notables, you know, people that later on were called the Wrecking Crew,
Yeah.
were there. Hal Blaine, Carol Kay, Howard Roberts, Glenn Campbell, and others, Larry Knechtel, Mike Dacey, others who became the, the Wrecking Crew. They were the number one players in Los Angeles, and of course, our producer knew them, knew of them, hired them, and hired an arranger to arrange that song, plus the other two that were recorded. And it was done in a 3 hour, 50-minute on, 10-minute break. And so within that 3 hours, we recorded 3 songs. It was all unionized and sort of regulated in that regard. So it was an exciting day. I was in a vocal booth in the middle of the whole thing. And when I heard what was going on in the earphones, it just totally emotionally broke me up. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. So I said to him, you know, you guys go ahead. I know I'm supposed to sing and it would be helpful, but I just can't do it. I'm just too emotional to do this. So they recorded the track, and later on, I did my vocal, and it all turned out fine. You know, it's just one of those things. And I have to say, Jerry Fuller could have been the artist that sang that song, and I think that it would have been a hit song either way. That's my personal opinion, but maybe the qualities of my voice had something to do with, with the hit that it became. But yeah, it was a fabulous day being there, watching, listening, you know, taking a break and being able to talk to the musicians that were there, and you know, hearing the playback and all that kind of stuff. So it was an incredible day, sort of emblazoned in my memory banks.
Awesome. Well, thanks for sharing that emblazoned memory with all of our listeners. That's awesome. And it's a huge song in the history of music. So thank you. Well, there's a lot of people that have had, there's a lot of one-hit wonders out there, but you were not that, because second album comes around, Young Girl, also in '68. That title song was just as big, maybe even bigger. I think that reached number 2 on the Billboard Hot 100. I'll throw the same question to you. Remember, I would love to hear the story of you in the studio cutting that one. I mean, at that point, you're well known. With Woman Woman, you were sort of an unknown entity. But by the time you do Young Girl, everyone is waiting to see what you do next. You're famous at that point. So yeah, how did that? Was there a little more money or production behind that one, since you were already a hit maker at that point? Or yeah, anything you can share on that one?
Well, that one was a little different in so much as in the beginning, our producer didn't know if we were capable of recording and being able to accomplish what he wanted to hear, within that 50-minute time zone, I'll call it, that was regulated by the unions. And by the second album, we were doing a lot of the tracking and things. So Lady Willpower was done with the rhythm section first, overdubs with the horns and the strings and all that, and the background vocals and everything. So it's not as, what does I want to say? It isn't as bright in my memory as Woman Woman. But it was another stellar experience, I can say that, because there we were with some success already behind us, and having been out in the world, and the world was our oyster at that point. We were just going for it. So it was it was a lot of fun to do. Jerry says, I think we've got another one here, so let's go out there and do it. And it was really, it was a great feeling for him to be saying, I think we've done it again. I think we've got another hit record here. We'll know as soon as we put it out there. But Young Girl followed, and Woman Woman sold about 1.5 million initially. It's over 18 million now, as far as the publisher is concerned.
Wow.
Young Girl, the same. It sold 2.5 million, and now it's well over 20 million.
Wow.
I'm just a lucky guy to have been involved in a team that knew how to make records, and we had some great songs. So I'm very fortunate there. And the fans continue to come and see us. So,
Yeah.
come to the Happy and see us.
Absolutely. Well, I wanted, if you don't mind, I'd love to hit on the third album you put out that year,
Sure.
Incredible, because I believe it's the first album that was all original songs start to finish. The previous two had some covers and some new ones, like you're talking about. But one of those new songs on this one was Lady Willpower, and that was a massive hit as well. Any insights you can share on putting together that one?
Well, that's when we actually started being the core band for recording the tracks, and all of us were in the studio together. We didn't have all the overdubbing stuff with us, so it was me and Carrie and Gary and Dwight and Paul and Jerry, our producer, and we together recorded the basic tracks for Lady Willpower and Over You, and he allowed us to become a bigger part of the recording process, and it was a lot of fun, to be given that authority. No, that's wrong word. To be given that opportunity, I should say.
Mm.
And I think that we did well because they were good tracks, and the sweetening came in, the strings, horns, and all that stuff, and Jerry, of course, made wonderful records out of them. Our arranger's name was Al Capps, not the cartoonist, but Al Capps was his name, and he really knew how to make a great commercial arrangement. So yeah, it was a lot of fun to make that album.
That's awesome. And so all three of those had come out in '68, the same year, all three of those first albums. So as a result, in '69, you're Grammy nominated for Best New Artist. And of course, well, there's no winners and losers. Just to be nominated is amazing. But Jose Feliciano
Yeah.
pulls out the victory. But y'all, you were in a class with Cream, Jeannie C. Riley, O.C. Smith, and you guys and Jose Feliciano. I mean, that must be incredible. Any memories of sitting there on Grammy night? Just that must have been a whirlwind.
We were on the road in 1968. for instance, we did 200, and if I counted them properly, we did 268 concert days. So the rest of that time is spent traveling. So we were never home, and we spent a lot of time in New York City, driving, out to New Jersey, Pennsylvania, wherever, going to colleges and things like that. And
Yeah.
it was a whirlwind of a time, that's for sure. So a lot of good memories there, meeting a lot of the artists, working with everybody from Mitch Ryder and the Detroit Wheels to Tommy James and the Shondells to the Monkees to whoever else. Just
Right.
so many good times.
That's awesome. And then so from that point, you changed producers, right? Jerry Fuller kind of, I don't know if you guys have a falling out or what happened, but you switched producers to R&B guru Ernie Freeman at that after that point, right? Is there a reason you switched it up? Too many ballads, too many, just went a different direction, or yeah, what was the reasoning?
Uh, the actual reason for me was that Jerry had chosen a song that I really didn't care for. And he wanted to record it, and he really was the boss. And I should have given him the respect and the authority to go ahead and just do it. But we went in and we recorded "Don't Give In to Him," which I didn't like in those days. But I have to say that it's become one of my favorites because of its
Yeah.
chordal structure and the kind of I call it the kind of rock and roll that it is, though
Yeah.
it sounds more like a big band kind of thing. But that was the reason we were at odds about that song. And then when the next song came up, I didn't agree with it at all. So we just chose to move on. My fault, my bad. I should have stayed with Jerry. He was a lot smarter than me.
Well, you know
But
what? When you're younger and you're full of piss and vinegar and opinions, that's all of us, you know? And then when you're older and wisdom and with benefit of hindsight, you look back and you're like, damn, he was right about at least don't give in to him at least. But that song is on your fourth album. It's called the new Gary Puckett and Union Gap album. I love the title of that. It's very We're going to just not come up with a name. We're going to call it the new
well,
Gary Puckett.
I was not consulted about that either. It was,
Yeah.
the record company kind of did what they wanted to do.
Yeah.
And in fact, in the beginning, I argued with them constantly for about, I don't know, it was weeks anyway, about putting a picture of us on our very first record, which was "Woman, Woman, Have You Got Cheating on Your Mind?" And they kept telling me, "We don't do that. We don't do that. We only do that for established artists." And I kept saying, "Why?" I said, "I think this is a very good picture to put on a record because we look different than all the other groups out there that are wearing, the tie dyes and all that kind of stuff." And
Right, the look
you
and the
know
gimmick was part of the whole thing. So it would have helped to be on the cover. Yeah.
yeah, and I believed it would have help, that it would help in the success of the record. And finally they relented and said, okay. They took us to someplace in, I guess it was New Jersey. It could have been Pennsylvania, but we went out in the woods, and took a picture out there. Um, Actually, let me rephrase. The very first one, the first single, was done in a school that had been demolished by the wrecking ball, and the only thing that was standing was the auditorium stage. So
Whoa.
we took a picture kind of on that stage, standing, sitting, whatever. And it was done in black and white. In fact, it was done in sepia tone, which is that old brown tone from, the last century.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Um, right. So they put it on the single, and when when they took the single out there was a program director, disc jockey in Columbus, Ohio, by the name of Bob Harrington, and he saw that picture and he went, "Whoa, what a great picture!" Because it looks very, very authentic,
Yeah.
like we were fighting the war. And he said, "I got to hear what this record sounds like because a lot of thought has gone into this picture."
Yeah.
So he played the record, loved it, put it on his station, WCOL in Columbus, and it went to number one. That's when the Cleveland office of Columbia Records called me in San Diego and said, "Hey, you have a hit record in Columbus, Ohio. We want to bring you to Cleveland to promote this record." So that's what they did. We went to Cleveland. We worked in Otto's Grotto for about a week to 10 days. And in the daytime, we went out and I went out. The whole band didn't go with me, but I went out and met the disc jockeys and the program directors and the people that were promoting that record. And that's the first time I ever heard it on the air, was in the car with a guy by the name of Steve Popovich, who was the Cleveland uh, promotional director of Columbia Records. And things just went from there. It was fantastic. Our first big concert was in Pittsburgh at the arena with Mitch Ryder, the Detroit Wheels, Junior Walker and the All Stars. I think the Lemon Pipers were there. Others I forget, but it was a pretty awesome experience to play to 20,000 people when we were more used to playing to 150 people.
Wow, yeah, that's awesome, and thanks for all the insights on the album cover and the
Sure.
remnants of the building and the stage is the only thing left. I love that. I love that. How did I even get on there? Oh, I was asking about the album, the new Gary Puckett and the Union Gap, the creative title of that. That's how we got
No,
on.
yeah, yeah. I was
Well, yeah,
at
this girl
school.
is a woman now was on that too. That was a big hit. And then of
Right,
course,
it was. That was
what?
Dick Glasser
Yeah.
as producer.
I'm sure we'll hear that at the Birchmere. Do we hear Let's Give Adam and Eve another chance? That was on your greatest hits. Did we hear that too?
Actually, Adam and Eve is not in the playlist for the Birchmere. We're doing Woman, Woman. Let's see. Yeah, Lady Willpower, Over You. This Girl Is a Woman Now. Woman, Woman, and Young Girl. That's really all I have time for. So
Right, because you
we
got to share the
we
stage with all those other hits from all those other groups. Yeah, there's only so much time to go around.
right.
Awesome. Well, just to round out, you've been generous with your time, but just to round out the chronology of all this, we've kind of gone album by album, and I really appreciate it. But so what the band breaks up, or quote unquote breaks up, at least hiatus, we'll say, in like 71, because you were going to do your solo stuff. We don't have time to go into all your solo stuff. I'll list them. I'll rattle them off. Gary Puckett album, Melody, Love Me Tonight, As It Stands, Timepieces, Is This Love, Europa, At Christmas, The Lost Tapes, This Is Love. I think I might have hit them all. There might be some I missed, but obviously you don't have time to put any of your solo stuff in this Happy Together tour at the Birchmere. But if our listeners like what they see at the Birchmere when they see it and they want to explore more of your solo stuff, give them one that you personally recommend, from the solo career. Be like, hey, drop in and check this one out and get an idea of my solo stuff.
Well, two albums that personally I love and I am very proud of. One is called The Lost Tapes, and that's something that my brother and I wrote in the middle '70s, and I produced it and played all the guitar on it. Another one is Love Songs, which is produced by a guy by the name of Howard Larrabee, who was in the band years ago. But we recorded love songs from the '80s, and once again, I played all the guitar to sort of live my rock and roll roots, as it were. And both albums, I think, are absolutely wonderful, and I hope that people will add it to their collection just so that they got a piece of me that I appreciate somehow in their collection.
Awesome. Well, yeah, thanks for that. There you go, folks. Check out that solo work in addition to all the great Union Gap hits you're gonna hear at the Birchmere. I guess as we wind this thing down here, just personally, did I read that for the last 35 years, something like that, you born again Christian? Is there anything you want to say, about your spiritual journey?
Well, I'll just say that he spoke to me years ago. I was a meditator for 10 years of my life, Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, transcendental meditation. And I meditated in taxis in the jungles of the Philippine Islands, in airplanes, vehicles, etc. And at one point, I was sitting in my little half lotus position, meditating, and the Lord said to me, "Walk away from Maharishi, and I'll show you the way." So I just stood up and went, "Okay," and He did.
Really? So you were
And
in
it
the
was all
middle of a
Christian
TM
stuff.
meditation session is when you
Right.
started exploring born again Christianity. Wow. All right. Well, I wanted to give you a platform to talk about it if you wanted. Um,
Well, I think it's a wonderful thing. So put the Lord in your life, and you'll find out that it's a wonderful thing to do.
Awesome. Well, that's the perfect place to leave it. Hey, thank you so much, Gary Puckett, for doing this. Again, everyone, it's the Happy Together Tour at the Birchmere in Alexandria, Virginia on June 8th and June 10th, the Union Gap, folks. I love it. Honestly, before I started researching, I researched before the interview, I had never made the connection to the Union Gap, Washington State. So thank you for doing that. And it's good you left Minnesota and went there because, Kirby Puckett is probably the best known Puckett from Minnesota. Rest in peace. So you had to.
I used to tell people he was my second cousin, and a lot of people believed me.
That's fantastic. He was awesome on the Minnesota Twins, by the way. All the World Series against the Braves. I'll never forget it. Gone too soon. Rest in peace. Great ball player. But this is not Kirby Puckett, folks. This is Gary Puckett and then Union Gap. Don't miss him at the Birchmere, June 8th and 10th. I really, really appreciate you making so much time for us today.
Thank you, Jason, for having me on. I do appreciate it. You give a good interview.
All right. Well, I'm only as good as the person talking, so that's all on you, my friend.
Thank you very much.
All right. God bless.
God bless.
Thanks so much for listening to Beyond the Fame with Jason Fraley. Our theme music is Scott Buckley's Clarion. Remember to give us a 5-star rating if you like what you hear. We'll see you next time.